For submissives negotiating with an absolute femdom. This pod is especially for submissives and leads on from negotiation doesn't mean what you think it means and a deeper dive into absolute femdom negotiation. You're listening to the Mistress Code. I am RacyWilde. In absolute femdom, the act of negotiation is not an invitation for the submissive to barter the dominator's power. It is the preliminary phase in which she determines whether the submissive is ready to enter her structured femdom, not to influence its contents, such as pegging, CBT, and feminization. While consent remains the bedrock of ethical femdom, it must be understood that in domina-led dynamics, her authority is not what is being negotiated, but the submissive's place within her femdom. To reiterate, the absolute femdom has already built her palace. The consent of the submissive is him walking through the front door to enter. Their negotiation is for the domina to refit her palace for the safety of the submissive, not to renovate, knocking down walls, revamping the kitchen, and redesigning plumbing in the bathroom to accommodate his tastes. To negotiate in a way that preserves her authority, the domina must draw a hard line between protection and permission. She is responsible for maintaining the submissive's physical and psychological safety, but that responsibility does not extend to modifying her dominance to meet his fantasies. Doing so commodifies her power. It reduces her erotic logic to a service rendered, a menu item tailored for consumption. Once power becomes a product, it ceases to be power. The dominator's refusal to commodify her power is not a lack of safety or care. Quite the opposite. In fact, it is the deepest form of care and respect she can offer within a real power exchange. It is the clarity that protects the submissive from the illusion that he is directing the dynamic. It is the boundary that enables authentic surrender. When a domina holds her ground, when she makes no promises to perform or deliver a particular fantasy, she signals to the submissive that he is not entering into an erotic collaboration. He is entering into her personal domain. This does not mean negotiation is absent. It is just reframed. The domina may ask for information, health status, triggers, trauma history, and prior experience, not to tailor her dominance to his liking, but to design the frame in which her will can be safely exercised. She may inquire about limits, but not with the aim of accommodating them, like fixed clauses in a contract. Rather, she does so to understand where harm might occur, where care is needed, and how to construct the container of intensity. Her questions are not signs of submission to the submissive's preferences. They are tools of discernment. The fact that she is asking them demonstrates her legitimacy. This reframing of negotiation is crucial. In relative femdom structures, negotiation often centers on mutual compatibility, a two-way discussion of who wants what and how to satisfy both. But in absolute femdom, negotiation centers on her integrity as an authority figure. She is not negotiating to get approval. She is evaluating whether the submissive is capable of entering her governance without corrupting it. To preserve this integrity, the domina must resist the subtle cultural forces that encourage women to soften, to please, and to perform. In patriarchal systems, female power is often only permitted when it is pleasing or marketable or in service to others. The absolute dominator's task is to reject this conditioning. She does not lead for approval. She leads because it is her erotic orientation to do so. She creates her femdom from the inside out, not the outside in. And when she does this, when she refuses to let negotiation become a covert conquest to dilute herself, she transforms the negotiation process into something entirely different, a ritual threshold. Negotiation is not a deal. It is an ethical judgment, and the submissive who passes through it does not gain control. He gains access to her world, to her structure and rhythm, and to her erotic logic. This is how safety and sovereignty work simultaneously. It is done by not treating negotiation as a transaction, but as a reverent sorting for what will protect each partner while preserving the source of power that brings the dynamic to life, female dominance. If negotiation in absolute femdom is not for the dominator to tailor her power to meet the needs of the submissive, then what role does the submissive play within it? The submissive's role is not to edit the experience he is about to enter. It is to offer honest information, clear thresholds, and emotional transparency so that the domina may fully assess what she is working with. This task is not to shape her power, but to make himself available to it. Too often, submissives misinterpret negotiation as an opportunity to advocate for their preferences, outline their fantasy structures, or establish protocols that they have seen somewhere else. This approach assumes equality. It assumes that his desires must be factored in as a co-author of the journey. No, this is a vanilla model. And in Relative Femdom, this can be appropriate, even necessary. However, in Absolute Femdom, it is not. The submissive is not there to build the femdom structure. He is there to learn it. His ethical contribution to negotiation is not fantasy design, but self-disclosure without demand. This self-disclosure includes the following: clear articulation of hard boundaries, the non-negotiables that exist for his psychological and physical safety. Honest description of current limits, not as fixed demands, but as markers that the domino may choose to honor or challenge. Transparent account of health, history, trauma, and readiness, not to secure outcome, but to provide the domina with all necessary information to wield her power ethically. In this structure, the submissive is not giving the domina instructions. He is giving her the map of where she must not cause harm. And within that map, she retains the full right to choose the route they will travel. This absolute model of negotiation is a radical reorientation for many submissive men, especially those socialized in a world that teaches men to be active agents, to optimize for pleasure, and to pursue kink through a framework of access. However, the absolute dominant requires the submissive to unlearn that entitlement. She invites him to submit not only to her actions, but to her authorship. This unlearning is not a punishment. It is liberating. It allows the submissive to step out of the pressure of managing his own gratification. It lets him release the need to steer relationships and encounters. He is not required to be in control of the experience or the dynamic. He is required to be responsible for his own self-awareness so that her governance can function at its best. In this way, the submissive becomes a co-guardian of the dynamic, not a co-director of her power. He brings integrity to negotiation, not through fantasy sharing or pleasure mapping, but through emotional maturity, honest discourse, and the willingness to be transformed. So the submissive's obligation in negotiation is simple but profound. He must let the domina lead, and he must give her enough truth for that leadership to be both real and safe.